updates. Good morning, Tobago. Wake up with Kandace and Denise.
Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago on Tobago Updates. Viewers, it is my pleasure to be joined right now by Mr. Radgman from the Argyle Farmers Association, Mr. Ramish Radgman, as well as Professor Wayne Ganpat, who is a retired dean of the Faculty of Food and Agriculture with UWI, and he says he's continuing to be a professor. You don't stop being a professor. So welcome to you both.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. I'm Professor Ganpat.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So is it doctor or professor?
Professor supersedes the doctor.
Yeah.
All right. So these two fellows are here this morning because we are speaking about a special training that's happening for farmers that's been going on actually for the last 3 days at the Kendall Farm School. So, Mr. Ramesh, could you just give us a little brief synopsis of what is this training about and how has it been going so far?
Well, let me say thanks to Tobago Updates for having us this morning, to the viewing public of Tobago, and also for the wider world. The training that we have embarked upon is really a collaborative effort with the Marvista Institute for Agriculture Training and Development we are collaborating with, and also the division of the Tobago House of Assembly. Right. The training so far have, shown a lot of interest by the participants, because I have observed on many occasions where, you have training program, and after people eat lunch, they're gone. But people wait until the time to go home and they still want to absorb more. So it means, therefore, that what Mr. Marcus Michael is doing, it means, therefore, that it is bearing some fruits, right? And the process to which we are embarking to realize high productivity and greater yield, right, is a scientific system that he is using in order to make the plant produce more, greater yield. So he's teaching us how to apply, the scientific way on application of fertilizers, when to apply it, and things like that. So we've been doing it wrong all the time. So that is why we were getting, not great yield. We were getting enough to survive, but not to be marketable in a profitable way to say it's a business we're doing.
I mean, and that's certainly good news, especially as we continue to speak about food security in Tobago. And we've been hearing the messaging from the Secretary of Food Security, Natural Resources, the Environment and Sustainable Development, Mr. Teacher Charles Panton, who keeps saying that it has to be about treating agriculture as a science, because it literally is a science. Like when you are in school, agriculture is considered one of the sciences that you take. So Professor Ganpat, now he was, just before we started, Professor was telling us about the fact that he has quite a lot of extensive and historical knowledge of agriculture here in Tobago. Now I'm excited to talk to him about that part, but we're probably gonna have to bring him on at another time to get into those discussions. But Mr. Ganpat, things are changing right now within our space. And I should say Professor Ganpat. Things are changing right now within our space, especially with the heat wave that we are experiencing, or the hot spell as the meteorological office calls it. Now, how is that affecting our farmers, and how does that even change, the way that we treat with our crops and even our livestock?
Okay, so that's a very good question. It's very topical now. Everybody is complaining about the heat, but the heat, it's the two things, heat and drought. So we're battling two issues. Drought, which is lack of precipitation, insufficient water, and then we have the heat. Now, last night I was looking at I was teaching a class and I was presenting them two charts showing them over the last 7 decades, the mean decadal temperature has slowly, for Trinidad, and Tobago has slowly risen all the time. It's getting hotter. And I compare that with the precipitation for the same period, last 7 decades, so that's since 1950, it has been going down. So you have temperature rising and less precipitation. But that's a recipe for disaster in agriculture if we don't take action. I mean, the climate crisis is upon us. It's no longer a climate change, it's a crisis, it's upon us. I mean, the United Nations Secretary General just called it, said the earth is boiling.
Yes.
He said that the other day. So, and that impacts everybody, but it impacts for us. We're particularly concerned about farming. So there's two things. There's the crops, livestock, and then you have the farmers, all impacted by heat. So it's the crops are going to suffer, will die, insufficient water, livestock, worse, because if they can't get water, if they can't be cool, if they can't drink, broilers, chickens are going to suffer dramatically. And then, but nobody's talking much about the farmer. He has to go out there, and that's an occupational risk to him from heat, stress, heat stroke, and a number of other things. So it's impacting everybody, and we really need to take action as soon as possible to help farmers across the country. But we're here to focus on Tobago farmers for this week. So that's what we're about.
Now, I mean, and as you brought it up, it was interesting that the head of the industrial court yesterday at the opening, she actually spoke, and she listed farmers as one of those people that are at risk of heat stress and all the complications that come with it. So, and I know that this part of the discussion is also part of the training that's going on right now at the Kendall Farm School. But Mr. Radgman, I want you to tell me a little bit about what are your farmers experiencing out there in the fields, at least over these past few weeks, especially?
Well, I can tell you, yesterday we had a demo, and it was very dehydrating. People had us to, drink, but they stood it out in the sun. But a lot of people had us to come where we had the, little refreshment, to refresh and to go back in on the field to see what's supposed to be done. So it's really, really impacting. It will impact farmers. If this heat continue, it will impact our livelihood, right? Because as Professor Ganpat said, the plants wouldn't have enough water in order to survive. We would not have enough, and if the crisis continues, we're hoping that the boat come on stream back and we could be able to get water.
Well, it came back yesterday.
Well, hopefully. we don't know when again it will go, because it's mechanical, right? And I do hope that we in Tobago, the policymakers, do things that will really impact Tobagonians by setting things up that we know it may not that permanent, but semi-permanent, so that we could be able to have a better livelihood, especially in the farming community.
So, Professor, what can be done for farmers that are looking on, or even our home gardeners? Because we have a lot of people here in Tobago, they have their own little kitchen garden that they are doing to help sustain themselves and so on. But what are some of those practical things that we can do to make sure that our crops are higher yielding? Right.
So we call this farming or food production in the new normal. That's the way it's going to be. We're not going to go back. We're just going to go forward, and everything's going to get worse. So farmers and home food producers also have to adapt. So they have to take on new techniques, new technologies, etc., to continue to farm, to be successful farmers. So in this climate crisis era, farmers have to adopt, and we're talking about drought here now. Tobago is more susceptible to drought, not so much flooding. So two things for Tobago: loss of fertile soil on the hillsides, that's in heavy rain, that's an issue. Trinidad is flooding, they have to deal with that. And both countries have to deal with drought. But Tobago really particularly for drought. Farmers have to adopt new technologies. So there are new technologies. They have to engage in rainwater harvesting. And even when they harvest their water, they have to, that's for homeowners could do that. Farmers could do that. Farmers have the additional thing to dig ponds. They could get ponds dug, and they could store their water to last them out in dry periods. Dry periods in the dry season, and longer dry periods in the rainy season. You understand what I'm saying? So they need to dig ponds, and associated with ponds, they must have micro irrigation. So they must have used trickle irrigation systems, and householders could do that. They have very simple systems for householders that they could do that they could put it on a timer, they could use their smartphone to do it. And farmers could have to adopt these things because water is a precious commodity now if we want to get past. So that's just some of the things just dealing with drought. Going further, these farmers have to advocate for the ministry or the Division of Assembly or UE to start producing more drought tolerant crops for them. And we have to change the crops that we get because the crops no longer going to withstand all this heat. But the training that we're doing this week is also, while we have those things going on, those crops and whatever it is, building resilience, getting higher productivity out of what we have, is if farmers understand the science, science of agriculture, science of farming, then they could apply technologies, pesticides, fertilizers, and we could build better productivity from the crops that we have. Now, it's not just about surviving, but it's about prospering.
Now, as you mentioned, changing the type of crops that we grow here, because, that is a very interesting discussion because we have to be concerned about the heat. What are some of those crops, from your knowledge, that that would better suit the conditions we have now?
Well, it's not so much, we don't change the crops, we change the varieties. So we could continue to grow some of the crops, but there are varieties across the world. People have developed drought-tolerant varieties of the same crops, vegetables, root crops, where was it? I think in St. Vincent right now, they're planting a variety of dasheen that is drought-tolerant and all this kind of thing. So there are, all over the world, there are varieties. We have to just get them, screen them, test them, roll them out. That's the work of research and the work of extension officers in the Division of Agriculture to promote these things among farmers. But farmers have a big role in it. If farmers don't advocate enough, if farmers make enough noise, they will get things. I always say it's a push-pull system. And if the government, whoever it is, not pushing, then farmers have to demand and pull, and they could get the extension. They must demand that they get it, and there will be a response. They need it now.
Especially since the farmers are the reasons why we are able to eat.
Yep.
Simple reason. All right. Well, we are unfortunately out of time, and Professor Ganpat, I hope this means that you would be back with us because there is a whole lot more that we can get into when it comes to agriculture. And of course, I want to thank you, Mr. Ramish Radgman.
Can I speak in something before we close? I want to say that the ministry, we are training also extension officers because we see the need for them to be a part of the training, right? And what Professor Ganpat have alluded to or said, to have ponds, we have initiated, Argyle United Farmers Development Group, has initiated the grant from Digicel to have a pond dug at our area up in Argyle. So we are actually looking into the future, right? So hats off to Digicel. We are in the last 10. Today we're hoping to be selected for the grant, hopefully, right? But so that's all I have to say.
Certainly, I want to thank you so much. And, this is reasons for people to continue to come out and support our farmers because they are trying and it's not easy conditions out there. So thank you both for being on with us. And viewers, please don't go anywhere because in an hour's time at 10 o'clock, you're going to be having brunch on Tobago updates. So thank you for viewing and stay with us till then.